10 seconds.
The BizNews Power Hour.
Welcome to the BizNews Power Hour, where we give you the rational perspective on business news that matters. Indeed we do, and we've got quite a program coming up for you tonight. We're going to be having a look at the National Health Insurance and whether or not it's A, going to be implemented, and B, whether the government is going to take something like 90 billion rand that is in reserves and in NHI. William Saunderson Meyer joins us now. William, just to make sure you're on the line, loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Right. Be with you in 2 ticks just to go through the running order tonight. After William, we're going to be talking with Magnus Heystek. He's written an article on BizNews today, which is, well, the top read article by some distance. It's all about the financial wipeout of the past decade. We'll also then be talking with Andrew Bannister, whose article on Ivermectin has hit the top of our charts here on BizNews. In the second half hour of tonight's show, Carrie Adams will be taking us through some, we're talking roses and wine, but Carrie can tell us about that in just a moment. But let's pick up on that big story of the past week. William Saunderson Meyer is very involved. Well, he's best known for writing about politics, William. So I'm just wondering how the medical side came to you, because you're well known within the medical community as the editor of Medical Brief that you send out every day. I read it avidly, and you had a lot to say this week, not surprisingly, about the presentation in Parliament on the medical aid funds that are now supposedly going to be nationalized. You can tell us about that in a moment. But how did you get into the medical field?
Well, you know, I started a publication called Legal Brief, which looked at aggregated legal content. And my intention had always been to do it in the medical field. It just happened to happen in the legal field, and so that occupied me for some years, and then the company was sold to Juta, and I went back to my first interest, which was to do it in the medical field. And really it is this thing of professional people are exceedingly busy. They don't have time to search several sources to get their information. So it's basically a thing of pulling together and assessing and evaluating the news. And of course, one of the fortunate things for us has been as fake news has increased, it enables, if one can become a trusted gatekeeper in some way to the content that one funnels to one's readers, and I'm sure you find that yourself, people are it's an intensely satisfying to people to get news that they can trust, which of course nowadays is really quite difficult, including from supposedly authentic mainstream sources.
Yeah, well, we're going to have a chat a little later with Andrew Bannister, one of our BizNews community members, on Ivermectin. I'm not going to go into Ivermectin with you, but I've got Carrie Adams here with us in studio. This is really your day, isn't it, Carrie? Fridays?
It's my day. Hello, William.
Hi there.
And Carrie is a big fan of ivermectins, as we are. Jeanette and I take ivermectin, and lots of people who supposedly shouldn't be fans of it are.
Well, I'm a big fan of it. I'm actually your ivermectin peddler, I think. Am I? Well,
I wasn't going to
was.
say. I wasn't going to
was.
say it. But I've
we
got
don't have to peddle it anymore, though, do we?
We can get it from our doctors, I think. But
Yeah.
William, do you take ivermectin, or do you think it's all a big hoax?
No, on both counts. I don't take ivermectin, and I don't think it's a big hoax. I think there's sufficient evidence, certainly that it's unlikely to be harmful, that they should allow people, which of course SAPRA has been forced to do, allow people to act on the clinical advice of their doctors. And the one thing that does puzzle me, and I'd be interested to hear Carrie's response to that, is I've occasionally come across someone who believes passionately in ivermectin but won't have the vaccine. There certainly is much stronger evidence, because the clinical trials have been done specifically around the vaccines, which they haven't been done around ivermectin, because ivermectin was not created to deal with a pandemic. So it surprises me sometimes to find someone who supports one and not the other.
Yeah, it is interesting. For me, as you say, it's a no-brainer to take ivermectin, because the side effects, there is no harm in taking it. It's a broad spectrum antiviral drug that hopefully helps in the fight against any virus you may pick up, which is why it makes sense for me to take it. I'm certainly not an anti-vaxxer, though. I am a little bit worried that if I have one, I might end up with a hand growing out of the middle of my back. But
Carrie,
on the other hand,
you're on public I was going to say television. Well, it is on
the other
YouTube.
hand, if you think of it, it could be handy if you're working in a bar. You know, you could pour from the back and the front.
Oh, William, let's. Carrie's here. It's Friday.
This is getting quite risque.
Well, it's festive, so that's what it's all about. But on a serious note, I was horrified to read your reports on what went down in Parliament this week on our medical aid funds. Now, let's just start off. They got 90 billion, as you report, in reserves, roughly. Who built that up? Where did that money come from in the first place?
Well, the medical schemes have built those reserves from the contributions of their members. The schemes are statutorily obliged to keep quite significant reserves, so that if there is a run by their members, for instance, during a pandemic, that they won't go bankrupt. So by law they have to keep significant reserves, and the more prudent of them keep well beyond the statutorily dictated reserves, which of course makes a very big fat honeypot for any greedy government to want to dip into.
And our greedy government, our government, which we know is greedy, is quite keen, it appears, to dip into those 90 billion to fund or to use in national health. Just maybe unpack for us what happened in Parliament and why they want to get their hands on it.
Well, they want to get. Well, any government will never say no to 90 billion if it's sort of able to be quietly trousered into the back pocket. In this case, it's not the government who's saying it, but effectively, it's a government organization, the Health Professional Council of South Africa, which is set up as a statutory body, and in fact is essentially appears to do the bidding of the government. It is one of the commanding organizations in our society that the government completely dominates. So if HPCSA, I keep wanting to call it HSBCA, which in terms of animalistic behavior,
be much better.
No. Careful,
but
careful,
it is
Carrie.
HPCSA. When they speak, I think you can say to yourself, well, this is an officially sanctioned, or certainly a view that sees itself as being close to government.
William, sorry,
yes.
Important in the current context. Is it important enough for a cadre to be deployed as chairman?
I don't know. The president is a cadre. The organization has always been dominated, since first democratic elections by ANC. The president is appointed by government essentially.
Okay.
So yes, I don't think he was appointed on the basis of his independent and critical thinking.
And is he a medical doctor?
I have no idea. I would certainly hope so, but I shall have to check that.
All right.
I would imagine.
So he goes off to Parliament. He goes and talks to the Health Committee. And what does he tell them?
The Health Committee, and essentially he's saying that all the funds that exist in the medical schemes should be transferred to the government, which of course would help enormously in terms of funding the NHI, which even 90 billion would probably only provide 20 or 30% of what it's going to need. But it's every little bit helps. The thing is, I think we need to take two things into consideration. One is that the ANC moves a bit like the lobster in Alice in Wonderland. It takes 2 steps to the left, 1 to the right, 1 backwards, and 3 forwards. And on that basis, you think that a negotiation has taken place, but in fact, it has advanced 2 steps in the direction it always was going to go. So when it puts out that all these funds will be sequestered or confiscated, it causes a furore and an upset. And maybe what we end up with is that it just settles for 20% or 10%. Who knows? I mean, it's part of the process. It's the first time I've seen this proposed. It comes from outside the government, so government can disavow it. And I think it's part of the ANC is incredibly good at this. It did it with the expropriation without compensation. It creates a nightmare scenario. Everyone goes ballistic about it. It backs off slightly, but still quite where it wanted to be, and everyone feels enormously relieved that the worst case scenario has been. But
surely the principle here.
It is.
I mean, we're going to the polls soon. I see Herman Mashaba standing for mayor of Johannesburg. I know who's getting my vote. It certainly isn't the deployed cadres, and there've got to be people around the country feeling exactly the same way. My goodness, we've been plundered, we've been taxed. We are sitting in a country where our debt is to GDP looks like getting into a debt trap. And now one of the last little honeypots that remains to look after your health is going to be nationalized, or a proposal to nationalize it. Now we must be grateful that they don't take all of our reserves, but only take 20% of it, and then we should be happy. They can't have a cent of mine, thank you very much. And I'm hoping that the Board of Healthcare Funders are doing something about this, William. What is their response been?
The Board of Healthcare Funders' submission to the Parliamentary Commission basically didn't deal with that directly. I don't know if they were as surprised as everyone else was that this suddenly there's a jack in the box suddenly appeared. Most of the submissions on the NHI bill start from the premise that it's really necessary, and we can all agree that it'd be great to have a universal healthcare system, but the practicalities are, how does one do it in a country where even the president at the end of January this year said, our financial situation is such we really need to accept that we may not financially or in terms of capacity proceed with the NHI as we would wish to. Now, the ANC comes to the NHI from a very strong ideological position. And it's a terrible thing, in the Zuma years, it didn't matter how strong the apparent strength of the ideological position was, because Zuma was such a flibbity-gibbet and so all over the place. We could all rest assured that he would either succumb to boredom or a bribe, and would never happen. I mean, the unfortunate thing about Ramaphosa is I think he's a very, very effective person, And although that would not be a popular view, but if you see the way he's driven expropriation without compensation, he has proceeded, and he's doing it because it's a way of keeping the party together. And the NHI is ideological within the ANC and the alliance in exactly the same way. But I mean, it's all very well to say we're going to take your 90 billion. I don't think the medical schemes or their members are going to be very happy to surrender that 90 billion. And I don't know what the Constitution, I mean, I think it's completely unconstitutional. Of course, the HPCSA response to that is, well, the Constitution must be changed, which...
Well, let's see. What an interesting story. Carrie, that's William Saunderson Meyer, who's the editor of Medical Brief. Are you going to be coming with me with placards? We did it. We did it against Bell Pottinger in Holborn in London. I see Pumzile van Damme, unfortunately, has resigned, and she was very strongly or outspoken against Bell Pottinger. Sorry to see her leaving the political scene.
Well, she did make a point today on Twitter to say that she has resigned as an MP, but she remains an active member of the DA.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to hear that she's not going to be lost entirely from the political side. Yeah, and that's the only time I've actually been with a placard.
I think we should go about this medical aid thing. I mean,
well, Magnus Heystek joins us now. Magnus, I know you
unfortunately has resigned.
Magnus.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon.
Got you in the background. I know you've been listening in on our conversation with William. I mean, really, another decision by government, or certainly proposal by government to take more of what's left, 90 billion rand, that's in the medical aid schemes built up over many, many years. And now the organization that is appointed, where people appointed by government, want to take that and put it into the national health insurance. My goodness, as a financial advisor, how do you see this?
I can see the reaction already on Twitter. People are absolutely up in arms. But I think William is 100% correct, and that's part of the ANC strategy. They get an outside body, but it's basically a plant or a cadre, to start the argument with a preposterous statement or argument or claim, and then eventually they whittle it down, and then everybody seems to be relaxed. When they work it out, the ANC has achieved most of what they set out to do. So he's quite right. There is a strategy. It's an opening salvo, and then they sit back and see what comes back at them. And depending on what comes back, they will adjust the strategy. But it's a very ominous opening salvo, and there's a lot of money at stake. And people are very, very passionate about their medical aid funds. And the reserves.
It's almost as that how much more will South African voters take? Because the story you wrote today about have you suffered a financial wipeout really puts it into great perspective. But I've got something special for you, Magnus. Just listen to this. That's what you started off your column with, or your contribution with today. A song called "Wipeout." Jeepers, it's a fantastic drum roll. We should get a bit more of it. There we go. Ronnie on the drums at No Parking couldn't do that, I'm afraid. He had his moments, but not quite to that point. Magnus, that's what's happened according to all the data you're throwing at us here, is that it has been a financial wipeout for South Africans in the last decade.
Well, if you look at the macro picture, and Mike Fischler, the consulting economist of Brenthurst, it's just published the graphs, which shows you that our problem started in 2010. Where our GDP per capita started sliding very, very quickly. And it's on the article, or in the article, you can have a look at it. And then it does recover from 2015 to 2018. And then it just smashed downwards. And that's the big picture, is that South Africa as a country is slowly but surely getting poorer in world terms. And then the other graphs and stats that I showed, and I went and back and compared the investment returns of a hypothetical 100,000 Rand and compared that with two major indices, the world and the US market, which I think is quite fair. And I could have done the emerging markets as well, and you'll have the same result. The result is that our growth has been almost non-existent in dollar terms. So your dollar purchase of your investments today is exactly the same as 10 years ago. So you've actually become poor in dollar terms. And I think that was the crux of the matter, is that you have to price yourself in dollars. Alec, you and I and most people pay either motor cars or medical aids or equipment in dollars. And to price yourself in a local currency is not very smart. And we've seen that in the last 10 years. New World Wealth also referred to that fact when they said a couple of thousand dollar millionaires in South Africa have just disappeared. And most of it is due to the fact that their South African assets have just gone down quite considerably to such an extent that they're not dollar millionaires anymore.
Yeah, the thing that jumped at me was where you said that South Africans have lost a quarter of their aggregate US dollar wealth. In other words, we take our wealth, we compare it what's happened in the rest of the world. We've lost a quarter of that over the 10 years to 2010 to 2020. That sounds like an exaggeration.
Well, that comes from the New World Wealth Report. It's in there. If you read it carefully, that's what they say.
That's crazy.
It's the reality. And if you just take, for example, I didn't even put the graph in there, but I have other statistics. For instance, the fact that new motor car prices have been rising not only over this 10-year period, but even before that, at double the inflation rate. The end result is people cannot afford motor cars. I mean, motor car sales are down to 12 or 15-year lows, and the fact is people can't afford it. That is just symptomatic of the fact that the dollar purchasing power is starting to have an effect on our middle class and also to previously very wealthy people. So it's, I didn't enjoy writing the article, but these are facts. Double-checked them with Mike Sischler and my colleagues. And as I said for you, for example, some of those large investment funds in South Africa have given you zero return in Rand terms over the last 5 years.
Yuck.
I actually checked one of our biggest funds. I'm not going to name it, but
that's unlike you. That's unlike you.
Name it.
Have you got scared now?
Let's take
Friday,
the Old Mutual Investors Fund.
Old Mutual. Why does Old Mutual always keep coming up on this program in a negative sense?
The management fees over the last 5 years has been 1.73%. The return to the client has been 1.3%. So they've made more money out of managing your money. And they're actually 5 years later saying, here's your 100,000 Rand back, Mr. Hogg. It's tough luck, or invest for the longer term. And, 5 years, in fact, 7 years, almost the same. It's just horrendous how the low the returns have been. And it's starting to appear in people's RA statements and their pension fund statements. We do this for a living, and people say, but we haven't grown in 10 years. Nothing. And the industry doesn't talk enough about it, and I think it should.
That's Magnus Heystek. You're listening to the BizNews Power Hour, brought to you by the team at biznews.com. And I'd urge you, if you haven't yet read it, the story was only posted this morning, but go on to BizNews and go and have a look at that excellent piece that Magnus has written. It's scary, Carrie, to think that in 10 years, we've actually, in global terms, gone back 25%. We know it's more expensive whenever we travel, but that's a little bit rough.
Well, travel's sort of out of the question at this stage of the game. Even if we were allowed to, we can't afford to.
I see what you mean. Okay, well, when we used to travel.
Yes.
Now, another big story on BizNews this, in fact, it's been going now for 2 weeks, is Andrew Bannister, who's a BizNews community member who wrote about Ivermectin. And Andrew joins us on the line now. Andrew, were you surprised at the extraordinary response that we've seen to your piece on ivermectin on BizNews. It's been the top read story, or number one top of the pops, for over a week now.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I see it's nearly on 45,000.
45,000 people. I mean, you're not a writer for a living. You're a member of our community, and we love all the members of our community, but you even more than most. And what motivated you to write this incredible piece?
I was getting incredibly frustrated seeing basically the world's major media just totally ignore the matter, put a sort of tinfoil hat on it, and refuse to actually look at it while everyone else is rushing to vaccinate themselves and their children with vaccines that are literally only 6 months old.
It is strange.
And
how old is
Ivermectin?
How old is Ivermectin?
Ivermectin's 37 years old, I think.
And safe?
It's safer than, I think there are 16 known deaths. Paracetamol records about 450 deaths each year in America. And some people are saying that ivermectin is safer than most vitamins.
So it's safer than paracetamol, which is a good start. But what does it do in this COVID environment? We know that if it's 37 years old, it clearly was not created for COVID. But how effective is it in the treatment of COVID?
Well, I think so a huge problem with the current way we treat COVID is that you are told to go home and wait and come back to the hospital if you have breathing problems. That's normally about a 1 week period. So you go home and try and recover. But if you don't recover in that first week, you then start going into the second stage of the disease where your breathing now becomes impacted, and that's where you really get into trouble. So while ivermectin seems to be effective at all stages of the disease, including long-term COVID, it's by far most effective used early. So what you should ideally be doing is, if you test positive, or even if you feel worried enough to go for a test, is you take ivermectin, and taking it in relatively low doses, and in those first few days, you will almost certainly not have to go to hospital.
What does it cost? Because we've seen that certain members of the establishment have been quite strongly opposed to endorsing ivermectin. Here in South Africa, people even had to go to court to make sure that we could take it.
Yes, well, so if you buy the agricultural product, then it works out to about around 50 a dose. But that's not ideal. Ideally, you would want to use the one that's approved for human use. And in 2018, the WHO estimated the price at $180 for a kilogram, which would make about 83,000 doses.
Okay.
So it becomes a sort of fraction of a cent.
And has the World Health Organization done anything to look into ivermectin and either endorse it or not?
Well, they did run a trial. No, they didn't. Sorry, they didn't run a trial, but they did commission Dr. Andrew Hill to do an analysis of it. He was on social media. This is incredible. Governments must start securing their supply, and that it would be immoral not to use it. He presented that on, I think, the 31st of January. Then on the 31st of March, the World Health Organization came out and said that they recommended against the use of ivermectin.
No, that's strange. So the commissioner report,
very strange.
The Dr. Andrew Hill comes out and says is pretty good stuff. He's very excited about it.
74% reduction in death.
So why?
That's what he said.
Why? I'm just trying to work out. Carrie, what do you think?
Andrew, hi. Tell me, what do you think about the story that went around that said there's apparently no patent attached to ivermectin?
Yeah, the patent expired in 96.
Yeah, so there's seemingly no way that anybody could make a huge amount of money out of the use of ivermectin.
No, I mean, it's bizarre. Merck, I mean, WHO was even quoting Merck, who was the original patent holder, as them saying that the drug had safety issues and it wasn't effective. But Merck actually donated 3.7 billion doses that were used to treat mostly river blindness. And these were mass rollout campaigns where primary care health worker would go into a village and dish them out. So how can that drug suddenly become dangerous?
Exactly.
And then in terms of Merck knowing it doesn't work, they were invited to assist on the Nigerian trial and the Japanese trial, and they refused to assist. So how do they know it doesn't work?
Well, interesting story. And that is still running on BizNews, Carrie. It's one of those pieces.
It's my hobby horse.
Well, I guess you're not the only person. And it seems, you can't fool people. You can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. And I talk to guys who are completely against Nick Hudson, for instance. They think he's come from another planet, but they will be taking ivermectin. Why?
Yes,
because
why?
it's going to save their skins if they do get COVID, or they
I've been
might not
taking
get.
it since September last year.
So the whole thing on ivermectin is real strange. But anyway, Andrew Bannister's piece is on BizNews. It's well worth going on. If you haven't read it yet, just go and have a look on the right-hand side. We've got the top read articles, and it's at number one, has been for a week. And I can assure you, the way it's going, it'll probably still stay there. Well, 45,000 people have read it this past week, so not bad going. Okay, it's top of the hour, and that means that we catch up now with the latest in the news headlines. Here's our editor-at-large, Jackie Cameron.
Critically ill COVID patients in Africa face an outsized risk of death, mainly because health systems lack key resources like hospital beds and oxygen machines. This is according to a report published in the Lancet Medical Journal, which says that the death rate in Africa is about 48%. This compares with about 32% globally in the month after admission to intensive care. The findings are based on a study of 64 hospitals in 10 countries, including South Africa, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Mozambique. Cybersecurity company McAfee has warned that an increasingly high number of questionable COVID-19 vaccines and illicit proof of vaccination cards are being sold on the dark web. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine sells for about 7,000 rand. One of South Africa's political heroines in the fight against corruption has stepped away from politics. The DA's former Shadow Minister of Communications, Phumzile van Dam, has resigned as a Member of Parliament. Among her campaigns, she led the charge against Bell Pottinger's white monopoly capital disinformation and state capture campaign. London-headquartered Bell Pottinger was paid for by the Gupta family and worked closely with former President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane. Bell Pottinger eventually collapsed under the outcry of its involvement in undermining South Africa's fragile economy. The cryptocurrency market nursed its wounds on Friday after a week of pain triggered by a Chinese regulatory warning shot, forced selling, and a possible US tax clampdown. Hong Kong-based analyst Munib Jan told BizNews the regulatory developments are likely to put a lid on cryptocurrency prices.
So what China has done is today they've banned cryptocurrencies trading outright. And one reason for that is, of course, capital controls. That's not everything, of course, because China has a credit problem and they're expected to be sitting on a lot of bad loans. So they don't want any risk to their financial system. Those countries concerned about capital control leakage, they may tighten the noose, so to speak.
And that was your BizNews Flash Briefing. I'm Jackie Cameron for BizNews. For more on those and the other big stories of the day, do go to biznewsradio.com.
Thank you, Jackie. And, now it's time for our market report.
Bradrock believes that with every change in life comes opportunity, and the markets aren't any different. The daily movements in the markets mean change for us all, sometimes small, sometimes big. This daily market report is made just for you by Bradrock, the first ever needs-matched life insurance that changes as your life changes.
Thank you very much, Dudu. And let's go on to how the markets are doing, or how the markets did first here in South Africa. Good day for Richmond. That was up by nearly 5% today. Also, Telkom rebounded. Remember, earlier in the week, it jumped 14%. Lots of volatility in Karoo, which is now listed on NASDAQ. That was up by 2% today. Telkom 2.5%. And Remgro, which is probably a little delayed reaction to that takeover bid for Distel, which Remgro owns a big chunk of, about 30% of, that was up by 2% today. On the way down, South 32, the spin-off from BHP Billiton. You might remember when BHP Billiton exited South Africa, took its South African assets, put it into this company called South 32, which has really been a disappointment. Unlike what happened when Goldfields Limited exited its South African assets, it put it into a company called Sibanye, Now, Sibanye Stillwater, which has been one of the greatest performers. So Neil Froneman used the vehicle very well. Lads at South 32, and they are lads, it didn't do that great, and that share price down 3.5% today. Tiger Brands, after a little uptick yesterday on a trading report, that's down by 2 2/3%. And then once again, some of the resources shares who've had a pretty rough ending to the week, they came down again today. Anglo Platinum, Anglo Gold, both down 2.5%. Goldfields just more than 2%. So that's really the individual highlights, as it were. As far as the individual indices are concerned, the market as a whole, it's a bit silly to talk about the market as a whole because it embraces so much, but the top 40 was today up about 0.25%. Industrials 0.5% higher, and resources were 0.5% lower. So nothing really sensational when you have a look at the South African markets. Internationally, though, it's been quite a good recovery towards the end of the week for the American markets. Friday is a quiet day, usually on Wall Street, because they're all wiped out after the first 4 days of the week. But the Dow is up by 0.2%, and both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ are pretty stable at the moment. They are virtually flat. NASDAQ down 0.25%, S&P 500 up 0.1%. As far as the gold price is concerned, I know we have lots of people who follow that all the time. It's very slightly lower today, about 0.33% lower. Crude oil, a little bit higher. Brent crude futures at $67 a barrel. And that brings to a conclusion the market report for the week.
This daily market report is made just for you by Bradrock, the first ever needs-matched life insurance that changes as your life changes.
Thank you very much, Dudu. And, well, Carrie, it's your half hour. Here we go. Who's your first guest tonight?
Well, anybody in South Africa who knows anything or wants to know anything about gardening has to know our guest this evening. It's none other than Shirley Wallington, who is Mrs. Garden South Africa. Shirley, hi, and welcome to our BizNews Power Hour, Carrie Corner Fun Hour. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We're all good, thank you. Well, Shirley, we are all raising a big glass to you this evening, and we should have been doing it for the last month because a little while ago, Shirley sent me a message on WhatsApp with a picture of possibly one of the most beautiful roses I've ever seen. To say, Carrie, look, I've had a rose named after me. The ultimate honor. Shirley, congratulations. And it is the most beautiful rose.
It is. I am terribly chuffed about it, I must be honest.
Tell the listeners what it looks like.
Well, I had a long chat to Ludwig today, and I said, I'm going to talk and I need to get a bit of detail on it. It is about shoulder height. It's a big bush. It'll spread from 1 meter to 2 meters wide. So it's a rose to put in the middle of a big border or at the back.
Yes.
It's very bold, like myself, rose that is stands. When it produces flowers on one stem, you will get a tiny bud and you'll get a fully opened one as well.
Yes.
And on the stem that Ludwig cut for me at the time, it had 25 roses on one stem.
No, it is just breathtaking, but it looks like a peony, doesn't it? I mean,
the little tiny buds come up almost like that other well-known rose has skipped my mind at the moment. It's a big shrub rose, and then it opens into like peonies, like a typical English rose.
It looks like a David Austin rose. It's delicate, sort of candy pink.
People say that.
It's candy pink for everybody. It's so pretty. It's like a ballerina. And does it have a scent?
Yes, it does have. Well, let me tell you a little bit of history. In the beginning, when Ludwig invited me and I went out to choose the rose, you go round and round and round and you love everything, of course.
Yes.
And then we chose one and the perfume was unbelievable. Just too magnificent for words.
Yes.
And I was very chuffed. More of a cerise pink. And then Ludwig hesitated about this rose, and I kept saying to him, what's the problem? He said, every insect that comes past the farm sails into this rose. Can't control them.
But that's good because that's also who you are. I mean, you are well known for being Mrs. Bug and Butterfly as well, aren't you?
So he said, come and have another look. So he says that he didn't think it was a good rose to put on the market because you'd be spending too much time fighting with nature around.
Okay.
So that's when this pink one, this lovely pink, and I must say, I really love this one. So I'm glad he hesitated because I got the rose that I really feel very, very happy about.
No, it is completely one of the most beautiful roses I've seen for a very, very long time. And for me, I too love roses.
I know.
And there's a long and lovely history that runs between wine and roses. And in fact, if people take note when they're traveling in winelands anywhere in the world,
they're great.
They'll see that there are rose bushes normally planted at the head, at the top and tail of each row of vineyard. And that is because roses, and you'll be able to sort of attest to this, roses love the same sort of conditions that vines do.
Correct.
Except that they show signs of disease much quicker than the vines do. So
they use them as a...
Yes, they're an early warning signal.
We call them canaries in coal mining.
Yes, it's like the canary in coal mining. It's exactly what it is. And I think my next guest is Paul Cluver, and I can see him nodding and shaking his head on the TV in front of us. But in South Africa, I know that there was also a story that in the olden days when they first planted the vineyards and they put those roses at the end, at the top and the tail, because they used to plow in between the vineyards with donkeys and little cart plows. And the donkeys used to take a bit of a short turn, and they used to knock the first 2 or 3 vine bushes in every row. So if they put a pricky rose bush right at the end, the donkey took a much wider berth. And they managed to save 6 vines on each row, top and tail.
I thought they also used them for insects again, maybe to let the insects go more to the rose and to the vines.
100%. They absolutely do. Shirl, so if anybody wants to buy your beautiful Shirley Wallington rose, where do they go?
Okay, so Ludwig has sent them to the Cape, to Natal. They're in the branches. He doesn't have a lot of specimens at the moment. The main lot will come through in the new season, probably in about July, August. But he has got a lot here at Ludwig's in Johannesburg. I've got a whole lot.
Okay.
I've got a website if anybody would like to phone me.
Well, tell us what's your website?
My website, shirleywallington.co.
Okay, that's easy enough.
And then my phone number's on it and my email address, and they can just tell me, and I will gladly help them get one.
Fabulous.
And I'll tell them how to plant it, however many they need. I'll assist them and guide them through it.
Brilliant. Well, I'm going to see if I can get one of the clever boys here at BizNews to take the picture that you sent me and put it onto the website somewhere so that people can see just how beautiful it is. I don't know, is that possible, Alec?
Of course it's possible, but I've got a question for you and Shirley. And the saying, days of wine and roses, is that where it comes from?
No.
In other words, you put your rose at the end.
The Days of Wine and Roses was actually a movie that was made in about 1962, and it was put together by Blake Edwards, who you remember was Julie Andrews' husband. Okay. And it was actually a very tragic. It was a tragic. I think we might have lost Shirley there. It was a tragic story about a couple who adored each other that became alcoholic, hectically alcoholic. And it was a bit of a misnomer to say, people make reference to, those were the days of wine and roses, and thinking that it was going to be such a fabulous time. It wasn't. It was actually a horrible alcoholic, addictive thing. It was a hectic movie.
So nothing to do with vineyards
but
and
a movie
roses.
that won loads of Oscars and things. And I know that Shirley's Rose is good. If it was a film, it would win all the Oscars, wouldn't it, Shirley?
Absolutely.
Shirley, thank you so much. We definitely will put all that stuff up on the website.
If anybody wants any help, just go to my website. I'll gladly assist and help them get one.
Fantastic. Thank you, darling. Brilliant. Thanks a million, Shirley. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alec. Bye.
Bye. So now that was Shirley, and now I've got one of my boyfriends on the line again. Paulie Cluver, how are you?
I'm very good, Carrie, and you?
I'm good, thanks. I always heave a huge sigh of relief when I get one of my techno-savvy farmers on the line, because, Alec, you've had no trouble with Paul, have you?
I think Paul is the first of your guests who's actually come through our
No,
virtual
he's
studio.
actually-
So
I
thank
knew
you,
you
Paul. You're her favorite boyfriend of the dozens that we've had thus far.
And he got it completely right with no clipsies whatsoever. Well, first of all, Paul Cluver Wine Farm or Estate needs no introduction to any of my listeners or any of our followers. It is one of our premium estates in the Cape. It nestles in the beautiful Elgin Valley. Dr. Cluver, I always say that they spelt the surname wrong. It shouldn't be a U, it should be an E, because it's the Clever family, not the Cluver family. They're all doctors, they've all got masters and doctorates and this and that. But besides that, they are gorgeous and they make beautiful wine. And we are chatting to Paul today because we picked up during the week that there is a competition called the IWC, which is an International Wine Challenge. And I think, Paulie, I'm correct in saying that it is one of the most serious wine competitions in the world, isn't it?
Yes. No, you've got to go through almost eight different layers of tasting. And if you consider the amount of people who actually enter the competition is significantly more than any competition in South Africa.
It is. It's thousands of people, and it's from about between 40 and 60 countries around the world who all enter their wines. The wines are tasted completely blind. You have no idea as to price, area, winemaker, topography. You know nothing. It's a flat-out blind, totally impartial tasting. And 13 South African wines were awarded, and 4 of the 13 belonged to Paul Cluver.
Yeah.
Congratulations, my Paulie. Talk to us about your wines. You brag as much as you want to.
I'm not very good at bragging like that. I think more importantly, Carrie, it is, it's an amazing thing for South Africa. It's always good for us as a country when our wines get international recognition. I mean, you can imagine last year when we couldn't trade in the local market for 4 months. A lot of our exports were critical.
Yes.
And in order to be successful with our exports, we need to be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the best wines in the world.
And you do, clearly.
Yes, thank you.
I'll brag for you. Keep going, keep talking. Alec and I will chip in to brag.
Yeah, and well, we delighted. I mean, we're especially delighted that 2 of our Chardonnays got a gold medal, and the 7 Flag Chardonnay actually got the trophy, which is absolutely amazing. And I think it's testimony to our whole team. We've got, I mean, you've mentioned vineyards and roses earlier on. But if we consider that. Winemaking is not just a winemaker or a marketing manager, but it's everyone who plants the vineyards, attend to those vineyards.
Yes.
Our 7 Flag Chardonnay is now being produced from vineyards that are 34 years old, so they've been nurtured for the. Yeah. So
how did that happen so quickly? That means I've known you for just about that.
Yes. Yeah. So it's amazing, and it takes that time also to develop a level of complexity and a sense of place. And that's really what we try to do, is we try and show the uniqueness of the Elgin Valley. And in that sense, we're blessed with the area that we are in.
Yes.
And then we have a wine that's exceptionally dedicated. I'm absolutely delighted that my sister married him. So his choice of moving away would be very hard.
Yes, no, he's absolutely, it's a Cluver thing. They entrap their in-laws. So Andres is married to Paulie's sister, and he's a winemaker par excellence.
It sounds very medieval.
Oh, I know. It's not incestuous, I don't think, but it is a little bit trapping, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it's more uncomfortable if she doesn't marry the right guy, but in this case she did, and we delighted. We delighted to have Andres not only as a winemaker but as a brother-in-law. He's an awesome guy, and he's, I think the 2 of us share a competitive nature. We always want to see how we can improve and get better.
Yes.
And it's incredibly hard because no one's ever going to be, I think, the best winemaker in the world, because it's a moving target. And as soon as you think this is the best wine, someone else comes along and says, well, this wine's better. And so we open to be challenged. We actually work together with a wine producer from Burgundy.
Who's your viticulturalist, Paul?
So Conrad from Vititech is working with us there. But we also then work with Martin Prier from Domaine Jacques Prier in Burgundy.
I know, which is possibly one of the most beautiful Burgundies that you can buy. Although for IWC told me I should be buying Albert Bichot's wine. He was the Paul Cluver of Burgundy. He scooped up all the prizes at IWC. But let's not brag about him. We're bragging about you. Dr. Cluver and your mum must be swinging from the rooftops, and you and Andries from the chandeliers in the winery. What does this mean for your brand?
I think, it's recognition for the hard work more than anything else. I don't necessarily think, and this is the important thing, is that in order to be a great winery, and I think there are many great wineries in South Africa, but and especially to be recognized as a winery of pedigree in the international arena, you need to be consistently good.
Yes.
To be good just 1 year, that's almost easy. But to be consistently good year in and year out, then people start taking note. And I think it's Baroness Felice de Rothschild who said it's easy to produce an icon wine 100 years. Yes,
and a Rothschild bank account, yeah.
Yes.
Said he painfully.
Yeah.
Do you know, Paulie, the one thing that I wanted to point out to the listeners as well is that you talk about consistency. So the Seven Flags is your flagship. It's premium. It's uber, super, duper premium. It's beautiful wine. It's puffed and blown over. It's hand picked, hand done, hand everything. And it's their top banana. But in addition to that, you have I call it Village, but I think you call it Village Chardonnay, which is the sort of little sister wine to your Village Pinot Noir, which comes in, I think, at under 100 Rand a bottle. And that too.
Yeah, just over 100 Rand a bottle. Yeah. That also the gold medal.
It also
but,
got
the
a gold
amazing
medal,
thing
so
is,
that's amazing.
But what's lovely about this wine is hopefully it will help people fall in love with this amazing variety Chardonnay, because it is 100% still oak. It's got no new oak on it, so it's got these beautiful fruit flavors. It's got hints of apricot, but then also lemon and lime, and it's just so accessible to drink. So it's a very, very enjoyable wine, and it helps us if you need to drink a bottle a day. That's the best one to go for, I guess.
Absolutely. Alex got a question for you.
For both of you, actually. As an outsider to this industry, and I'm sure many people are listening to this and a little confused, give us some context on gold medals and trophies, and does everybody get a gold medal like they do at school nowadays? Just for showing up, or how does that all break down? Because it sounds to me like this is an enormous global achievement.
It's massive. It's a massive achievement. So I know that, I don't know what the trophy is, the top potato. The gold, I think, Paulie, is 95 and above, isn't it?
Correct.
Gold medal.
You need a rating of 95 points and above.
Out of 100. Sorry, guys. We mark out of 100. Yeah. So keep going.
Yeah. So
then silver.
So anyone who scored a 95 points and above will receive a gold medal. And as you mentioned earlier on, Carrie, is that in total 13 South African wines managed to achieve that rating.
Yes.
So what's the percentage though who get that rating? So of every 100 wines that are nominated, how many get 95 or above?
I should have had a look at. I did look at the figures, so I can tell you roughly an educated guess. But I think that there was a total of 467 gold medals awarded out of the thousands of entries that were in.
Thousands of entries.
Yeah,
so would it be 10%?
Yeah, it's over 8,000 wines, so it's
Yeah.
about 2.5%.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, that puts it in context. And then the
Yes.
trophy. What is the trophy?
The trophy is just the best wine in that category.
In that category, yeah.
So once they've picked all the gold winners, then they go again and say, of the gold winners, which one stood out
Which
the
is
most?
the best. Yeah.
Your Chardonnay was number 1 in the world.
Yeah.
His
Wow.
Chardonnay was number
Seriously. I mean, what did the French think of that?
No, look, they do have different categories, but and the French overall, France won the most medals from the IWC, as they always do, as they should. They've been farming for over nearly 3,000 years, so they've got a little bit of a head start on everybody else. And I think with competition that they're getting from the likes of the Cluvers when it comes to specifically Burgundian varietals, I think they've really had to sharpen their pencils and polish their marbles, hey, Paulie, the French.
Yeah, I think, Carrie, I mean, if you look at one obviously is that ratings, and that makes an impact. But with wine ratings, it's I think the good thing to always compare it to is car ratings, right? And I don't know what is the car of the year at the moment.
It was a Volvo. It was definitely a Volvo.
No, it was a Peugeot 3008.
Well, there we go. But a Peugeot 3008 still doesn't sell for the same amount as a BMW or Merc.
Yes.
And even though it's won that, right?
Which is why we buy those other ones, yes.
Indeed.
So I think, and that's why I go back is in order to be able to get to a certain level of stature, even in the wine industry, is you need years and years of consistency and quality. And I would go as far as there are some French producers who will not enter any competition because they actually stand more to lose than to win. So the likes of a Romani Conti, or in the case of Chardonnay, Leflaive from Burgundy, will absolutely never enter a competition, because if it doesn't win the competition, it's the most expensive Chardonnay in the world.
Yes.
It will only lose. And everyone
Makes
else
sense.
will say, my wine scored better than Leflaive, and mine is about a tenth of the price. You should rather buy mine. So they have an absolute cult following. They produce absolutely really incredible wines. And I think Leflaive is probably the benchmark of it when it comes to Chardonnay. Not probably, it is the benchmark.
Paulie, while I'm talking to you about France, did Domaine Jacques Prieur, did they enter?
No. They also,
that would have been awful if they're busy consulting to you in South Africa and yours won and theirs didn't. Case in point.
But if you consider, Carrie, their top Chardonnay from Domaine Jacques Prieur sells for 10,000 rand a bottle on release.
Yes. And it's probably sold out within 2 weeks of its release. It's probably gone. You can't get anything more. Yeah.
Exactly. So, as I said, they stand a chance to lose, not gain, by entering and getting this type of recognition. I'm hopefully over time we have more and more South African producers who can actually say that we actually international ratings. We just can. We have a list.
For the time being. For the time being, I think it's brilliant that you continue to have the confidence and the commitment to put our wines, your wines, into these competitions and come home with all that gold and silver and all those bragging rights, because without people like you, our industry would be very mundane. Paulie, thank you so much. Have a brilliant weekend and congratulations.
Thanks, Carrie, and thanks, Alec.
Well, that was a wonderful education. Thanks to Carrie and to Paul. There's a comment on our YouTube virtual studio I've just got to give to you. It's from MJ, who says, I need Piet's coffee mug. That's Piet Viljoen's coffee mug, which has got some rude writing on it, to express my thoughts on government's proposed plans to interfere with our medical aid contributions.
Oh, Paulie, I don't know
Amen.
if you heard that. Go back on the BizNews thing. Go on the what does it happen on a download and upload? You know, I'm a bit of a tech nut.
Well, we on businessradio.com at 7 o'clock. So in other words, in half an hour, you can listen to this whole show again, right
Okay.
from the beginning, and then 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So it's all there. It's
Awesome.
the benefits of modern technology.
It's absolutely
Carrie,
amazing. Yeah.
as always, we've come to the end of another festive Friday. What boyfriends are you going to be dragging into our virtual studio next week?
Oh, I don't know. I'm going to have to look and see. Paul's a bit of a hard act to follow.
I'd say. I'd say. But it's, well, as always, a real pleasure to bring you the Festive Friday edition. Just to close off with, you don't have to worry about the markets. You can go home and sleep now because everything is pretty calm in America. The Dow's up 0.5%. The Nasdaq's down about 0.25%. So nothing big happening there. On the JSE today, it was also rather quiet, excepting for all those fortunates who own Richmond shares.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was up by 4.5% today.
Wow, really?
So up $7, R7, 154 Rand.
Goodness.
On the way down, the only one I guess that you worry about is a little bit is the resources shares, about 2.5% down. But the reason for that has because they've had an incredible run in the past week, and we'll be telling you all about the incredible runs next week. BizNews Power Hour every weeknight on Fine Music Radio in Cape Town, biznewsradio.com, and do come and join us on BizNews TV. It's our virtual studio. It's just go onto YouTube, type in BizNews TV, subscribe, and we'll let you know when the program's coming on. It's a lot of fun, especially on a Friday, and we look forward to being in your company then on in our virtual studio from next week. Until then, from the team here at BizNews, cheerio. You've been listening to the Power Hour, brought to you by the team at BizNews.